Hey, everyone. It is Damien, aka Sleepy Reader, here with another comic book thoughts video, only about 4 weeks late. In the past month, I've read only 30 new comics, which I should read about, I don't know, 40 to 60 new comics. I have a pile of comics I'm going to tell you about, give you very quick thoughts about, I hope. And but I still have an equal pile, probably another 30 from this month that I haven't read yet. So I'm a little mad at myself for slacking off, but what are you going to do? I got to do other things in life too. Um, Before I dive in too deep, I wanted to do kind of a PSA for Heroes for Heroes. This is a fundraiser spearheaded by Bronze Age nerd Christopher, and it's an excellent cause. It's called Mission 22, which helps out veterans who are struggling psychologically, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, all that other stuff that the sacrifices some of our veterans have made puts upon them. So they are having an auction on Saturday at noon my time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. This coming up Saturday, and I think it's the 16th. I will put links below, and you can also, you don't have, I mean, it's fun to give to a charity through an auction, but if you don't want to do that or are not available at the time, you can also just donate some money, which I've done. Um, and of course, charities are a personal choice. I am very enthusiastic about charities, and I love when the community tries to raise funds and awareness for a topic. So, as I often do lately, I've divided these comics up by category. I have not ranked them even within their categories. I'm just going to jump around. Some that I loved, some that I liked, a few that maybe I less than liked. So let's start with my sword and sorcery fantasy category. I'm not sure if you'd call Autumn Kingdom fantasy or sword and sorcery. It's also metafictional, where the writer of a fantasy series and his family find themselves embroiled in a fantasy story where the parents are kidnapped and the kids are sort of wandering into the fantasy world out of our world and maybe gaining fantastical powers and magical swords and stuff. It's written by Colin Bunn, who can be a good writer, but I think I have a feeling the story feels kind of rushed. There's something tricky about fantasy, especially with that more sort of epic fantasy, kind of high fantasy background, that it takes time to build up. Wait, Christopher Mitton's art is, to my taste, it might not be to everybody's. Like last time, I still wish the coloring were better, but or better suited to the art. But anyway, kind of fun, not an essential book at all. uh, Much more central to me. I would never miss Gru. And this is the second issue of the Minstrel Melodies. And Gru is ends up taking care of a group of orphans. First decides to parent them himself, then tries to find a village, because it's a large group of orphans, to parent them. And hilarity ensues, but it's a bit touching. And I mean, I'm always affected. I love being a parent, and I'm always affected by stories about parenting if they're done as well as this is, and with a light touch, but still touching. Um, okay, not a light touch. Savage Sword of Conan, number 5, written by the main story, which takes up almost the entirety of the issue, written by Jason Aaron, art by Christopher Isherwood. I enjoyed the art quite a bit. It's old school. I could picture it in an issue of Savage Sword way back when, art exactly like that. However, maybe not the superstar art, if it was inked by Alfredo Alcala, then we'd be, really cooking. But anyway, I enjoyed the art. Um, but it didn't make, the art wasn't enough to make up for the fact that what Jason Aaron has done with Conan here and with the Hyborian Age, with uh, Robert E. Howard's characters, is so counter to the whole thing. It's like he wants to wreck our enjoyment of this. Conan just a little bit, but more the Hyborian Age. But still, it's just like he probably thinks he's being clever, and maybe his editors think he's being clever, kind of flipping the narrative on Conan and flipping the narrative on the whole Hyborian Age and the whole Robert E. Howard way of telling a story. And it just kind of pissed me off. It was not fun to read. Would I have enjoyed it if it wasn't called Conan and it wasn't the Hyborian Age? Maybe. I would have thought it was an interesting story, maybe, but not a great story. It's a bit, I don't know. It's a bit all over the place too. And it's just part one, so we got another part two. And I heard Higgy Pop say that it was a big disappointment, and now I know exactly what he meant. And he was totally right. Much more enjoyable was Conan Battle for the Blackstone, issue number 3, but it does suffer from the flaws that you get from a what do you call it? A event. Uh, there's a lot of stuff that has to get glossed over, and the nature of the threat is so big and cosmic, apparently, and yet it feels kind of small. It just doesn't everything feels out of balance in the book. I think while I have gained a huge respect for Jim Zub as a writer, I think I wouldn't say he bit off more than he could chew, but I think he just took a wrong turn with this kind of story. But there's still lots of fun little bits. The art is okay, or the art's very good, but it's not at quite the excellent level I'm used to in the main story. Um, where the artists really seem to be giving it their all, and there seems to be something special going on between the artists and writers in the main Conan run. And speaking of the main Conan run, the best of the 3 Conans this week or this month was Conan the Barbarian number 16. I love this cover by Colleen Doran. It would be interesting to see her do a color Conan comic. It might take her a long time. I assume she did the color here because the color is as important as the line art here. And I love the way she portrays this ethereal demigoddess or goddess figure. But I also love the Braithwaite art. It's very gritty, and this is a story that I should be against because I don't like stories that delve into Conan's childhood. It just makes him it brings him a little bit down to earth. I think Robert E. Howard intended him kind of at the intersection of kind of a real life person and mythology, sort of, almost a demigod himself, or, sort of a fantasy of the ultimate barbarian. And somehow seeing him in his childhood usually reduces that. But somehow Jim Zub made it really work here, and he made Conan's philosophizing, so to speak, really work. And it all felt true to Conan, despite being, uh, a little bit stuff that I would not think would work with Conan. So Jim Zub for the win. Um, so yeah, it was Conan. I think Savage Sword has now been renewed. So I hope that after this uh, Jason Aaron, Jason Aaron fiasco, they move on to writers who really get Conan. Maybe just more Jim Zub, if nothing else. It would be fun if they brought back Roy Thomas, in my opinion. Have Roy Thomas work with Jeff Isherwood. That would be cool. So I just have one comic in the purely uh, slice of life realm. Hate Revisited has been one of my favorite comics. What I've loved about this is the little vignettes, and the wacky characters and the wacky art and all of that, and the way it sort of is both unrealistic or sort of goofy cartoony, but also really resonates with in sort of a heightened way with life and friendships and relationships and all that stuff. This one has at its core, has a very long story compared to normal. So 2/3 of the book, or maybe more, 3/4, is this longer story. It feels a little more serious, and it didn't work as well for me. Partially, I think, because it was longer, but partially because it felt like you needed more of a background with these characters. With I knew nothing about Buddy's brothers, and very little about his son. I know a little about anyway. Several of the characters and the elements and the discussions in here did not did not resonate with me because I just didn't have the background. So the first 3 issues I felt completely good with never having read the original Hate series. And with this fourth one, I still enjoyed it a lot. Still very good, but I kind of wished I had read the original stuff first. Now it's sandwiched, that longer story sandwiched between two stories in the past, which are the ones in the black and white, and those were just as good, and I love them. So I still highly recommend Hate Revisited. If this is done with, look for the back issues in the cheap bins, or maybe it'll come out in a trade. I'm sure it will come out in a trade, but I feel like it's something that is best read in single issues. So if you get the trade, read it slowly. Okay, then I have a quite huge group cluster of superhero comics, which is like, superhero comics are sucking me back in, mostly thanks to DC Comics. I decided to try the new creative team on Detective Comics because it's Tom Taylor, a a writer who I've always thought was fantastic on superheroes, and Mikhail Janin, who's an artist who's one of my favorite mainstream DC artists since the New 52, when I first discovered him. And Janin's art is just even better here. And Tom Taylor is working on an interesting story. I mean, the problem is with Batman is everything's been mined before, but he's going back to Thomas Wayne and his oath as a doctor, as a healer, to save everybody, and then kind of paralleling that with Batman's current day story. And I thought it was quite interesting. I can easily burn out on Batman, so we'll see how long I stick with it. But I think I am adding this to my poll, especially because I just love that Mikhail Janin artwork. And I think I already put this on my pull in advance. I enjoyed Batman and Robin. I did not enjoy the script as much as Detective Comics, but it was fine. And it's Batman and Robin year one. But the only sort of special angle on it is, we got the really cool artwork by Chris Samney, and we are really exploring what the very first mission out on the streets with Robin would be like. And Mark Waid, the writer, does a very good job on that. It's just less riveting to me, but the artwork sizzles. I became a huge fan of Samney when he did his run on Daredevil with Mark Waid. That was one of my favorite Daredevil runs of recent times. Not that I keep up with Daredevil all the time. It was one of my favorite superhero comic books at the time it was coming out. Um, and Samney does not disappoint. But I don't know if I'll stick with it because sometimes Wade's storylines kind of bore me. I did not stick with Samney when he was doing that book with Robert Kirkman because that kind of bored me. So his artwork's great, but yeah, we'll see. And so that was like 2 Batman books. This one is ostensibly a Batman book, Batman Gotham by Gaslight, this Elseworlds continuation, the Kryptonian Age. But what they're really continuing is the world of Batman Gotham by Gaslight, where we introduce what essentially will become the Justice League, right? And we introduce more villains. This issue has, Lex Luthor being really evil. We get Victor Stone, Cyborg. We get Jay Garrick. We have already from last issue, we have the old Green Lantern, and now we get Clark Kent as sheriff of Wild West Smallville. This is so good. I love it. And there's only one more issue left. I think it came out today, actually, as I film. And then I hear the story will continue in the spring. So I will be writhing in pain until the next installment of this Gotham by Gaslight comes out. Because the whole Kryptonian age thing is this big kind of mystery of what happened tens of thousands of years ago when apparently there was a Kryptonian civilization here on Earth, I guess. And then some horrible disaster happened. Okay, and now I have read all three of the absolute DC books. I really enjoyed Absolute Batman. Um, with the caveat that it's yeah, I've read so many redos of Batman in a different way. I mean, there's a couple of other ones going right now, including Gotham by Gaslight and Batman Dark Age. And this is another, yet another twist on it, but it's done very well. Uh, Batman is poor and the Joker is rich. That's my summarization of it. But it's done in a very fun way. I was a little bothered by the way Alfred was portrayed, so I hope we get more on that because right now Alfred seems like an evil hitman. Um, but the new issue of that came out today, so I'm looking forward to that a lot. The second in the triumvirate of Absolute books was Absolute Wonder Woman, and a lot of people are saying this one is the best. I think I enjoyed the Batman a little more. Um, Not saying that this is not good or that it can become great, there's sort of it just had basically two parts to it that it went back and forth between. One is Wonder Woman in the present on her skeletal Pegasus fighting giant monsters. We don't really know why they're bad. She's saving mankind. That part just felt kind of generic to me. And then there's this really cool part where Wonder Woman as a baby is being raised in hell by Cersei, and that was amazing. It was really good. The art here is really good. I thought the coloring sucked. It's Jordi Belair, who is considered one of the best colorists, and I feel like sometimes she's a really good colorist, and other times she seems totally ruining things or not trying or something. And I felt like there were tons of scenes here where she kind of ruined the a bit the enjoyment of the art for me. So for me, Wonder Woman feels like wait and see. This could be a really great series, or it could just devolve into sort of something more generic. It's hard to tell from this first issue. The writer is Kelly Thompson, and I'm pretty sure I've read a few other comics by her, and I know that a lot of people like her a lot, but I haven't read a lot of her comics, so I don't have the basis to have faith in. As a longtime reader of comics, I can't look at a first issue and say this is going to be one of the best series of the year yet, which I feel like some people are kind of thinking with Wonder Woman. Hopefully, they won't be disappointed. I was expecting to be disappointed by Absolute Superman because it's written by Jason Aaron, and after reading that Conan, I was all anti Jason Aaron. This is actually a very good science fiction story, I feel. It's nothing other than the planet's called Krypton and it got destroyed in some way. We haven't found out yet. This is a slightly different Earth. I don't know if it matches up with the Earth in the other absolutes. I can't tell. Um, with evil corporations who are even much more evil than in our world. Not that I'm saying all corporations. Some corporations aren't evil, but anyway. And then and then there's a lot of flashbacks to Krypton, which I enjoyed, but it's not our. It's just another it's just a cool science fiction story in the with some of the names, like Jor-El and Lara L and all of that. Because it's a completely different Krypton culturally and everything. It does feel like it's verging on a little bit of a heavy-handed environmental message, which I'm not totally against. I mean, I am very, very concerned about my daughter's future because of what we've done to the environment and continue to do. So I kind of appreciate that, but I worry that he's going to go a little too heavy-handed on that, perhaps. Okay, another fabulous artist. So it's hard to pick who was my favorite artist amongst all these comics, but this one is up there. I'm just totally addicted to Javier Rodriguez's artwork. Each miniseries I've seen him on over the past few years, he's gotten better, and so this Zatanna is definitely a peak, and the art is so good. The story has been fun. In this final issue, it kind of wrapped up in a very easy way, nothing clever or um, I don't know. And it felt like if you look at just the writing without the art, Zatanna's world still feels kind of thin. Who the different magic organizations are has never been fleshed out or anything, but the visuals are so great and the story is fun enough that this, ends up the art brings this up to an A+ comic for me, despite, you know, caveats on the writing. Also super, super fun, Savage Dragon. And ha- more than half of my enjoyment is the art, but the stories are always fun and light. Um, there's lots of naughty bits along with big action that tickles my 11-year-old, inner 11-year-old. So there's that weird frisson between feeling young and then feeling old while watching, women or a character show off her sexual urges. But anyway, uh, excellent comic. When I dropped Savage Dragon, I read Savage Dragon because of Jared Osborne for 2 or 3 years, and then the art style changed a little bit, and I just wasn't as into it. And now his art style is back, better than ever, with the type of sort of the inking style and the bombastic layouts and everything that I'm really loving. The final superhero book is also fantastic in a completely different way. This one is wacko. It's like I don't know, Mad Magazine, National Lampoon level absurdity combined with superhero stories and angst. And you really feel sorry for our humanized fly who's trying to make his way in our world and trying to avoid having to be a henchman again. And his love of punk rock and everything. It's kind of moving and laughable. And this is a really good comic. Uh, you'd have to. The artwork is a very specific kind of artwork, and I imagine it's not for everybody. But I'm really enjoying it, and it really adds it super adds to the humor. Kyle Starks and Ryan Brown are kind of a dream team of a certain sort for this kind of wacko story. Phew. How am I doing time wise? Well, I'll just keep going as fast as I can. So on to the horror. Loved Frankenstein. Nothing really new to say about this. Again, this is a perfect marriage of art and writing, and the artist and writer are the same guy, Michael Walsh. So I think he's super a guy to watch, especially when he's drawing his own comics. And great, great coloring by Tony Marie Griffin. And um, I don't know. To me, it's just pitch perfect. They're doing the Universal monsters, so I guess without paying Universal, you can't use the classic Frankenstein. But they are very literally redoing the original Frankenstein movie from a new angle, from the point of view of this boy whose father is a piece of Frankenstein. And it just adds a level of poignance and horror to it. Um, and you feel now not just for the monster, and you hate the scientist and his henchmen. Anyway, cool stuff. Cool stuff. I really fantasize that they'll come back and do Bride of Frankenstein too, because I just watched Bride of Frankenstein again and I loved it just before Halloween, I think. I really wanted to love Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, where he meets the Great Gatsby and Sherlock Holmes and H.G. Wells or H.G. Wells Time Traveler, I'm not sure which. Um, there was something flat about it, and the art has been flattened out, and the simplification of the art here is just not as good as it should be, I feel like. Um, it's I think I feel when I'm reading into the artist's thoughts, and again, it's an artist writer, Tom Scioli, and I think in some ways he very cleverly melds pieces of literature into a King Kong story, but it's not compelling. It feels like a bunch of I don't know, literary metafictional stunts without sort of a through line of a story that I really latch on to and relate to or anything. So I just felt distanced, and I wasn't grabbed by the art or the color. Um, it's almost purposefully uh, amateurish alternative art, I guess. The Girl Called Cthulhu had kind of very alternative art on the inside, nothing like this cover, and it kind of gave me whiplash to go from this cover to the art on the inside. But it's a really weird, cool, twisted story about this private investigator who's quite sexually free, I would say. It's a very sexual story, and some involvement with uh, demon cults and H.P. Lovecraft takes place in the era of H.P. Lovecraft. So would I have liked it if they had an artist who could really capture that pulp novel style? Yes. But once I got used to it, I really enjoyed the art in here too. Godfather in Hell, Godfather of Hell. So he isn't the Godfather of Hell yet. I don't know if that's to come, but he's a mobster who is a sort of enforcer, debt collector type. And he breaks the rules of the mob, even though what he did seems kind of like he was helping the mob by doing it. But anyway, they still have to punish him. They kill him. He goes to hell, lots of torture and stuff. And then he gets sort of rescued from the torture when the devil makes a deal with him that he can become the devil's debt collector. So that's where we're left by the end of this issue. Kind of a potentially fun setup. We'll have to see where it goes. Again, I really like the art and color. Um, Another kind of another approach to a simpler art style, but one that was very effective. Um, I seem to remember that I think it was called The Gray Ghost from way back in the 70s from Atlas Comics, had the same plot that he was some rogue who was killed and who was sent back to work for the devil and collect souls. I might be wrong. And there's probably other ones. Or to a certain extent, Spawn, right, is a little bit like that too. The Goon, I love The Goon for the art. I love the characters, the sense of humor. This series, I'm trying to speed up. This series, Them That Don't Stay Dead, seems to have a lot of moving parts that I'm not completely. I need to reread it when it's all together, I guess. It felt a little overstuffed and a little too much showing, not telling, perhaps, info dumping, especially by for an issue 3 out of 4. But I still enjoyed it. There's no way I'd dump it. This is still good feeling. Major Arcana. I really am loving the color, particularly that Jeff Lemire is painting in here, and I'm enjoying his art. And the characters are fairly interesting. Like I said with the first issue, there's a certain similarity to many other Jeff Lemire works, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad at all. But there was such a small beat of events in this issue, maybe like one and a half things happen, plot points happen in this one issue, that I definitely feel like this is a read in trade would be much better. Profane was a detective story that also has a fantasy supernatural element of characters coming out of books to solve crimes. And I enjoyed the idea. It felt like there wasn't enough to fill the 5 issues that were here. It could have been like a 2 issue story or something, and it felt kind of repetitive. It didn't. There was never like some extra bit to add a twist to it all. I still enjoyed it. If Peter Milligan comes out with a semi sequel to it, like perhaps another character comes out of another book, I'll probably look into it. And I'll still always check out any new Peter Milligan books. But as Peter Milligan books go, it was one of his less successful ones. quite successful all the way through. And this is my final book in the horror section, but it's actually a detective, not detective story. But I had so few, and I don't know, mystery, horror, detective, supernatural. Nothing supernatural in here, just kind of horrific stuff that is unveiled with a serial killer and his connections to people in the Soviet apparatus, and a detective who is highly idealistic. This one was clever because the mystery was solved in issue 4, and this is the final issue, issue 5, and it's the aftermath. And I thought that was very cool. There were bits of it that were a little clumsy, and it's always the ending of mystery stories that don't satisfy me as much. But I think this was still very high level, excellent scripting overall, for a mystery and for my take on a mysteries, which always leave me a little bit empty, but it did a good job. So Sanction should be a good read in a trade. Okay, my final segment here, and I'm way over the minutes I fantasized at 32 minutes. Oh well. Precious Metal. This was a very good issue of Precious Metal as they go, because have not been understanding Precious Metal, and I understood more in this issue. I hate to say it, but I've come to dread, and I think the latest issue of Precious Metal, final issue, came out today. Every time an issue comes out, I dread it because I feel like I should be liking this book. The art is so good. All my friends on YouTube are saying it's totally fantastic, and I'm feel lost. And then I feel trepidatious in reading each issue. But this issue gave me a little hope that I was understanding a little more. So maybe after all 6 issues are now out, if I read them all together, maybe it will make sense to me. I hope. Maybe it's just an empty vessel that people are reading things into. That's the evil part of me thinking that. Loved this issue of Geiger. Geiger, which I've liked all along, is getting stronger and stronger. Um, it's kind of got a basic level plot, and then Jeff Johns, the writer, just adds in these layers, this time with all these zoo animals that we were introduced to the last issue. We have a guest penciler, Paul Pelletier, and he does a fantastic job, and the color is consistent because it's the same colorist, and it feels like everything looks the way it should, even though it's a guest penciler. So uh, Ghost Machine is really kicking it out of the park, and I think Geiger and Redcoat are now battling for who is my favorite Ghost Machine comic at the moment. Null Hunter. Okay, this one I'm not sure about. I didn't get into it on a first read, but then I kind of flipped through it again before doing this video, and it started clicking with me a little more. But it's very obviously kind of a sci-fi retelling of a Greek mythology. You've got a corporation uh, called Olympos. They replaced Zays, I'm not sure, a name kind of like Zeus. His father had a company called Titan, and now they've replaced it with Olympos. And I think they terraform worlds or something. I can't remember now. And one of Zeus' sons, what's his name? I he seems to be like Hercules. I don't know if we get his name. Um, C. Duarte? I'm not sure. Anyway, his son is kind of works for the company and is kind of a cyborg warrior, and we see the what are they called, the executive board, which is all people who seem to be named after Greek gods, sort of following his him as he goes, I guess, on a series of quests. So it'd be like the 12 labors of Hercules, I guess. And he fights something that could be sort of viewed as like the Nimidian lion in this first issue. It didn't hook me as much as I wanted it to. But I'm intrigued. I enjoyed the color. I enjoyed the art up to a degree. The layouts are really good, especially in the action scenes. Maybe there just wasn't enough in this first issue, and I worry that it's just going to rest on the fact of its parallels to Greek mythology. But we'll see. With when it's science fiction, I am really intrigued and I really love science fiction. But if they kind of drop the ball on the science fictionness, then I get all picky and fussy. Of course, I don't have those kinds of rules when I read Flash Gordon. I know it's pulpy fun, and it's continued. I think of this as the fourth issue because there's a zero issue that is important to this series. It's continued to be really fun. The story is inching forward. So in this issue, we get basically a flashback to how Ming the Merciless was raised, which was really cool and explained a lot. And we get a gladiatorial fight within a prison planet, which was also pretty cool. But I kind of am getting antsy. I want it to move forward more, but maybe I'm just antsy because I'm worried the thing will be canceled before a whole lot happens. But hopefully it's selling well and we'll get Flash Gordon for a long time by this creative team. Jeremy Adams and Will Conrad and Lee Lowridge. It looks beautiful. It's fun to read. What more do you want? The Stand, sorry, not The Stand. Stand Still, its science fiction element is a device that makes time stand still, except for the person holding the device. And we have this kind of roguish assassin character who has that device. And up till now, he's been killing people who it feels like they deserve it. But in this issue, he kills a pet. And so I'm sort of like, now it's harder to root for him, and I'm starting to worry that he's going to do other awful things. And there's something that he does that might have been intended as a good deed that had bad consequences, or maybe he intended the bad consequences. I'm not sure. Still, I'm loving this series. You kind of have to let go and take a ride along with them to just accept the way they're doing this comic, which is very decompressed and really playing visually with the decompression across the page. And I am all in for that kind of experiment that they're doing here. So they're doing it very well. And we have Paranoid Gardens. Continue to love it. Continue to love the art. And we have some character revelations in here, but we still have all kinds of wacky, weird, mysterious stuff and all kinds of bizarre characters. And I'm just loving it. It just shows, as I think I've said before, you can do a confusing comic book right, and then a reader like me loves it. You do it wrong, and you lose a reader like me. But so I hope this goes on a while longer. Usually, Dark Horse Comics only go 4 or 5 issues, and we're on issue 4. So I'm hoping it's like 12 issues at least. And speaking of 12 issues, we have issue 4 of Devil's Crucible, which is going to go 12 issues, but in 3 4-issue chunks. So this is the final issue of the first chunk, but it's just another chapter with, I believe, a cliffhanger-ish ending. But I'm really enjoying it, really loving the art and the crazy sci-fi situation he's put Grendel Prime into the very far future, fighting an empire of vampires, where the Grendels and their whole kingdom have become mostly just a myth, although there's a few people keeping it going. This issue's coloring didn't seem as good as previous issues. I don't know if something went wrong or it's just my imagination, because I'd really been enjoying Brennan Wagner's coloring in the first 3 issues. Maybe it's me just getting picky. So overall, art for the win. There was so much good art, and its art is the first thing that makes you love comics, or makes me love comics. And I can't pick up a book and flip through it at a store and hate the art and pick it up. It's unless I have some really good reason to do so. So the art is the entryway to the story, and often a huge part of the authoring of the story, of the storytelling, of the charm of comics. Just the art has to charm you. It has to matter to you. And a lot of the art here did. My daughter asked me to pick a favorite out of these, and I couldn't. There was probably 10 favorites. So thanks for sticking through yet another video. I wanted to do it like 25 minutes somehow. I'm just not fast enough. Um, so yeah, I'll see you all again soon. Um, Hopefully do a comic book thoughts video again soon, but I have other videos that I want to do too. Everything's falling behind. The world is in crisis. Everything's crumbling, and I can't get enough videos out. Talk to you later.